That one glorious word represents more than just the geography between the Sabine and the Rio Grande. It represents a unique idea and way of life. A life of rugged individualism, proud self-reliance, gritty toughness, and fierce independence. That is what made Texas, and that is what will save her again. Howdy, folks. Sam Houston here. I want to thank you for tuning into the Feed Bandit podcast. Feed Bandit is the Texas first outdoors brand built by rabid Texans, for rabid Texans, and all those who aim to be one someday. We unapologetically promote the ideals that shape our Texas pride and Texas first patriotism through our love of hunting, the outdoors, and the gear and apparel we create. Texas, above all else, preserve the tradition, protect the legacy. Check us out at feedbandit.com. And to repeat that great rallying cry from a former colleague of mine, liberty or death. Now, enough of my talking. Here are a couple of bandits that love Texas as much as I do. Enjoy.
Well, howdy folks, Corn Bandit coming back at you with another solo Feed Bandit podcast. It is still considered the holidays, so co-host and I are taking a little break, if you will, to be with the family and all that. We'll get back to doing our usual dual recordings here shortly, but wanted to record this one today because I actually have quite a bit to say. Interesting real life hunting scenario that unfolded a couple of days ago, so I wanted to bring it out there to our listening audience and see what you all think, obviously, on the topic as well. But the topic today is really going to be older deer, and in particular bucks, and then it's going to morph into something else. We'll talk about that here in a moment. But as far as the opportune time to take older bucks, what's your definition of time? Are we talking about, their age, or are we talking about when in the season? So, obviously their age, that's a pretty simple question. The older the better, theoretically, right? Bucks typically, from what I've read and what I've been told, they peak at 5.5, 6.5, then they really start to decline, in the 7.5, 8.5. Of course, obviously, you see deer every single year that, age at 9.5 and, sometimes older than that, albeit I think that's pretty rare. So really the opportune time to shoot deer is, older bucks, that is really in that older age class. The older the better. At Rancho Bandito, we, again, like everybody else, we do strive for those older ages, but doesn't always unfold that way. Sometimes you'll see a deer that's 4.5 years old, but, you look at his antlers, and then depending on, the range conditions of that year, that's absolutely tremendous. If on Rancho Bandito, like this past year, for example, had a ton of rain, pretty dry fall, but, when it counts in the spring and summer, very, very, very wet. Got an incredible protein program. We have an incredible, predator program as well, followed by ample water. Okay. So really, that's when you can really isolate genetics as the culprit, if you will, of, poor antler development. When we say poor antler development, of course that can really vary with depending on who you're talking to ranch, things of that nature. But, for us, if we've got a deer that's, older, that's at 3.5 years or older, and that just has a subpar 8-point rack or less, then that's a deer that we would consider a management deer and should be taken. So what do we mean by subpar? Okay, well, thin antlers. Okay, so no mass. Short tines. Okay, or maybe some sort of genetic abnormality. For example, maybe has a fork over there, but you can tell that. As far as a fork is concerned, I'm talking about the entire antler is a fork, not that the G2 is forked or anything of that nature. So something of that nature. Not a lot of width. Okay, we like to have wide deer. So when it comes to those kinds of management bucks, as far as when's the time to take them, well, I mean, obviously you'd like to get them before they have a shot of breeding, right? I mean, that's the goal anyway. Of course, good luck. That's not easy naturally. When it comes to shooting the older deer, though, in that shooting class, 6.5, 7.5, even 5.5, when's the best time to do that? Well, of course, for us at least, from what I found, is post rut, and then the reason why is because those deer, I think they're a little easier to identify, in my opinion. And here's kind of what I'm getting at. First and foremost, post rut, the bucks start to go back to that bachelor behavior, right? When they're hanging out together and doing their thing together, right? And the other thing is they will also frequent more feeders. Okay, so the feeder activity for bucks at Rancho Bandito in the December timeframe, especially late December, January is incredible. They are absolutely hitting it, and this is the reason why. Again, depending on the year, depending on the range conditions, we will get our protein feeders filled up. Sometimes into early December, right? Sometimes in early December, but most of the time by January 1st, we want to have them pretty full and ready to rock and roll, okay? Because that's when those bucks are really in that recovery phase, putting all that weight back on that, you saw them on game camera in September, and they're just massive, right? Well, they lose like 30 or 40 pounds sometimes in the rut run around. So need to put that weight back on there, especially for those older deer. But again, going back on subject, I've always found that it's a little bit easier to harvest some of these older deer because they are more feeder prone late in the year. Also, you'll have to excuse me. I'm fighting something right now too. I've also found that not only from them just frequently visiting these feeders, but something else that's very interesting is that you're able to really kind of see those herd dynamics a little bit better as well. So it's funny, you'll see, the feeder goes off, okay, and here come the young bucks, all right, and then those two fawns, right, and here come the younger deer. It's typical those younger deer really show up first, and who's going to be last? Well, it's typically the older deer, the smarter deer, and of course they just don't come right in. They'll sit there on the edge and check things out before they even bother, venturing into a feeding area, especially if the conditions aren't right. It's windy, it's hot, something of that nature. Case in point, this past week rather, I'm out at Rancho Bandito, and I'm hunting a stand that's got both a corn feeder and a protein feeder. And right as the feeder goes off, okay, here come all the fawns. All right, so there's some fawns, excuse me, some younger deer, with some younger bucks rather, come in and so that's kind of usual. It's really kind of crazy because as the evening goes on, you start to see more and more. You start to see older age generations of bucks file into the feeding pen area. Okay, and it's absolutely crazy. And it's funny because as the older deer start to fill in, so the antlers start to get bigger, okay? Because naturally with the program that we've got, we're going to let those deer, get bigger, try to reach their full potential. So it was really, really cool. That being said, my intention of being in the blind that night was to obviously harvest an older deer. So that's when we fast forward to kind of the actual hunt and start talking about that. So really great. I had a scenario where I had almost, I think it was 10 bucks right in this general area. Okay, again, all different age classes. I then saw a buck coming from the right who was older. You could tell he was older. He was walking very arthritically. Okay, so he had just kind of a little hitch in his giddy up, okay? He had this neck that was shaking as he walked, okay? extremely dark forehead, appeared to have that rolled nose, that short nose that's so characteristic of older deer. And even though he had lost obviously a lot of his weight, he was still a big animal. Okay, so now that's his body. And then as he came into the feeder pen, he kind of started doing that stagger, like, hey, I'm the boss, put his ears back and all this kind of stuff. And all the other deer gave way, actually left the feeding tube, to let this monarch in there and do his business. So very two huge indicators, right? Three indicators there, right? A, he came in real late, quote unquote. B, his appearance, okay, naturally all the characteristics, big, saggy neck, shaky, jiggly neck, still had a lot of weight, dark forehead, Roman nose. But also, I go and I look at his antlers, okay, and he's 10 point. He's not broke off, which was a little surprising. No break off. Okay, he was not very wide. Had some decent height on him and decent mass. Okay, but he was 10 point. All right, didn't have anything else kind of cooking for him. He just seemed like an ideal management deer to take. And so when he was lined up, and let me tell you, man, that is challenging. Okay, when you've got a buck. When let's see, that was about 10 bucks in there. Like I say, this guy was the, about the 11th buck in there in the little feeding pen area, not a little feeding pen area, but a feeding pen area nonetheless. Trying to get them to kind of break up to get a shot was a real challenge, but eventually he did. And I was able to place a 260 round just right behind his shoulder. Which is typically where I go for. Again, I'm a hunter, I'm an outdoorsman, and I like the quick kills. We're also in this for the meat as well, right? And I knew with a deer of this caliber, of this weight, that he would really have a lot of meat on him, and I was most assuredly right. So squeeze the trigger, hit him right in the pump station. He jumps the pin, which actually ended up being a really good thing because he was a monster as far as weight is concerned. Jumps the pin, and then you can see him start to do kind of the shaky legs, and he passes away there pretty quickly. So just outside the feeder pen, easy access for a vehicle, so that was super exciting, And I, of course, was elated, shaking in a way, because hey, that was my 9th deer. No, shoot, that was my 8th deer of the year. But obviously, it still gets me, and that's a great thing. So, ended up putting him down. Very excited. Reloaded. You never know. Had a lot of bucks in there. He was the one I really wanted to take, but we've got a couple other ones that are on the hit list. You never know. Let's see what happens. So. This is when we jump into kind of the third phase of this podcast. You will end up wounding a deer and not recovering a deer, even if you're hunting with a rifle at some point. And in fact, it's going to happen probably multiple times. Obviously, the more you hunt, the more you shoot, the more that's going to happen. Despite how much you practiced, okay? Despite, how dedicated you are to putting that bullet in the right place, it's just going to happen. It's very frustrating and it's very sad. But it happens. And of course, you archery guys, my hat's off to you, man. I just, for me, I'm a quick kill guy. I don't care if it's coyote or a hog or anything. I just want it done. Killing's a part of hunting, and it's just the way it is. But I want it done quick, and let's move on. Let's get that meat, right? So, fast forward, that buck has been down for about 20 minutes, and lo and behold, here comes another target deer. I can't believe it. I'm like, man, this is crazy. This is kind of been how my year has been, though. I've had multiple targets coming in at one sitting, which has just been really very convenient, right? Because I don't get to go down a lot, as much as I'd like to anyway. And so here comes this guy. Okay, now this guy, a little bit different, a little bit tighter in the belly. Okay, so clearly not as old. And then we knew this. Okay, but this guy we aged him about 4.5, maybe 5.5. Okay, lost a lot of weight, since the rut. Again, though, the guy by this point, there was probably 6 or 7 other deer in there. I think 5 of which were bucks. Again, he came in very stiff-legged, ears back, like, hey, I'm the boss. Don't mess with me. So, again, showing his age a little bit there. Let's talk about his rack. Well, his rack was a standard 8-point rack, okay? Very thin, mass-wise, okay? No height whatsoever, no width whatsoever. In fact, if we were not an MLDP property, I don't know that we legally could have shot him. Okay, so that kind of tells you what we're kind of dealing with as far as the caliber of deer is concerned. That being said, man, he is a perfect one to take out the herd. Now, he kind of goes back to that age class that we were talking about earlier that is, in that 3.5, 4.5-year-old range with, poor genetics. Again, given that all the other factors, range conditions, rain, was protein, was water, was really good. So yeah, he was one that we wanted to get on the ground earlier, but he just eluded us. And hey, listen, that's deer hunting, right? So he comes in, he lines up virtually the exact same position as that monster 10-point that I had just shot. And so here we go. I mount the gun. I got a good rest. And I squeeze the trigger. Okay. Same exact setup. I mean, he wasn't at the same tube when I didn't. Well, neither was the first guy. The first guy was kind of meandering around when I shot him. But same exact setup. Okay. I squeeze a round off. He jumps up, kind of does the stereotypical, looks like a horse, his legs go up in the air. I can see that I have hit his shoulder. Okay. So I was a little far forward, which is not really what I wanted to be. But again, it was a 100-yard shot, 140 grain bullet. Okay. I've shot so many deer and hogs for that matter with that 260 in the shoulder, have had zero problems. Okay. So I'm like, yeah, this guy's hit good. We're in great shape. He jumps the pin. And when he jumps the pin, he starts kind of doing that hobble. Okay. Kind of that like what they're running, but they're hitting like every two steps, they're just kind of So I was like, oh yeah, this guy's gone. Now the problem is where he ran in the back of the pin is some seriously thick grass. Okay. And of course, it's the bane of my existence. It's old Johnson grass too, which I absolutely hate. But we keep that field in back of the feeder like that because why? Well, if we didn't, the travel route between a major bedding area and the feeder pen would be completely wide open. Okay, so during not so ideal feeding conditions, or weather conditions rather, those bucks may not feel safe coming in. Okay, and they may say, well, I'm gonna wait till night. Okay, or I'm gonna wait till better conditions. So we keep the grass that way, in hopes of helping, convince deer, hey, everything's good, let's come on in, right? So that's what we did. Anyway, this deer jumps the pin. He's hit hard. I know he is. I've done this a million times. Hell, I just did it 20 minutes ago. And I lose him in the grass, okay? And so I'm looking. Mind you, by this time, there are deer running everywhere. Absolutely everywhere. But again, because of this grass, I can't see what's going on back there. My typical time frame for deer that are hitting the lungs, which majority of mine are, is, I normally give it 20, 30 minutes at least. Okay. Every one of us has jumped a gut shot deer, or jumped a deer because they went down there too early. All right. I'm very experienced. I'm not going to play that game. So he ended up, again, doing what I just say, is what I just said rather. And so I wait the time, Okay, probably got about 10, 15 minutes more dark. No problem. Okay, I mean, I am convinced that this deer is down right there because of everything. Okay, and mind you, that was deer number 8. I lied, so I shot. Yeah, so the big boy was 7. This guy was 8. Okay, 8 deer this year. 8 deer. Experienced shooter here. Okay. I pack up. I quietly get out of the blind, which I'm a big believer in that too. I go back to my vehicle and I drive up there. I go to the first guy. I'm like, okay, we're in great shape. And then I start looking for the second guy. I cannot find him to save my life. I cannot find him. I'm thinking, are you kidding me? This is incredible. So I put my stuff down and I go look for blood. Okay, now typically with these lung shots, I can't find a lot of blood. Typically, well, ironically, these two deer that I shot went out the same way. So I can clearly follow the blood trail with this guy, the first guy that I shot. Okay, that was easy. And it was a pretty big blood trail, which again, I normally do not get. Okay, but the second guy, I could not find a drop of blood to save my life. Nothing. 0. And so I'll fast forward. The efforts that we put forth to find this deer were nothing short of crazy. Okay. Needless to say, this isn't golf where you lose a ball. You got 5 minutes and you give it up. No, this is an animal. Although I know that deer did not go to waste. Okay, I mean, if you really want to get meticulous here, I mean, the coyotes and the the bobcats and the buzzards will get to them naturally. Then the bones will decompose. It's good for the soil. I mean, we can go through the whole thing, right? But naturally, I'm going to do everything in my being to find that deer. Okay, now I may not be able to eat it the next day, but guess what? We went out there to find that deer, and we did not find that deer. That is the second, let's say I lost one about 10 years ago. Same blind too, which is kind of crazy. It's the second deer that I have lost, it's the first deer I've lost in about 10 years. And I just, to this day, okay, it just happened a couple days ago. It breaks my heart. Okay, it really does. It upsets me greatly because if I'm taking the responsibility to harvest this animal, I got to recover it. That's just the way it is. Same thing with dove. Okay, I don't give up on dove. If I saw it fall, it fell. I'm gonna go find it, right? But with the deer, obviously that can be significantly more complicated. So what do I think happened? Well, you got me. Okay, the way that deer was acting. Okay. The way that deer was acting when he, kind of neighed up like a horse, like I say, his hooves are up in the air, leads me to believe that I guess my shot was maybe a little far forward. Maybe I hit him right in the leg, okay, the actual leg bone. And though I do believe it was fatal, because again, this was not at 300 yards, 200 yards, pretty big power, not big, but a powerful bullet. Perhaps I just clipped his leg and just clipped his lung. Okay, something of that. Clearly, I clipped his lung because that was his heart. He'd been dead right there. I do believe that deer is dead. I do believe that deer suffered, which it kills me. I hate that. God, I hate that. But that is the nature of the beast. It's gonna happen. When I was a kid, I took it very, very hard. I have since, not taking it nearly as hard, but it still bothers me just the same. So, what do you do? What do you do after you make an errant shot? Okay, which again, listen, I was a little far forward. It happens. Okay, well, what do you do? Well, a couple of things you can do. First of all, if you want to quote, now this is tough too. You can't guarantee a kill. Okay, well, go for the neck. All right, I've got buddies who swear by neck shots. Okay, they go for the base of the neck, and every time. Now, I've done that as well. I typically go a little bit higher. I've had one paralyzed. It was not fun. I had to put it down, but so that's one way of doing it, right? The other thing is get back on that range. Okay, for me, what did I do? Well, I went out there the following day and I was able to harvest 2 more deer. Okay, so I was able to get out there and actually put down 2 more deer. I went for the base of the neck. Okay, just like my buddy who was counseling on me on this thing suggested, go for the base of the neck. So that's what I did, and I was able to put 2 more deer down, great deer, management does, and actually finish off a portion of the ranch, with our tags. So that was instrumental in helping me get over that thing, But it's gonna happen. It's gonna happen. It's weird and it doesn't make sense, but it's gonna happen. So that's the best thing you can do. Obviously, if you're like, oh, who cares? Well, I don't care. I screw up, bad shot. Oh, well, that's just a stupid deer. That's when you got to hang your gun up. You've lost respect for the animal. You've lost respect for the lifestyle. Okay, if you've got that kind of mentality. And I also think, speaking of wounding animals, it's very important to tell children about this too, new hunters. Okay, because that's rough. That's rough when kids wound a deer. And it can really get to them. So it's important to talk to them about that. So anyway, that is that. Overall, besides that lost deer, which again still's killing at me, it was a hell of a hunt. Was able to put down multiple animals and a lot of good meat for the family. Got some meat for my buddy who was in desperate need of some. That's the nature of hunting, man. So it is what it is. But that is all I have for you today. Happy New Year. We'll say it the other way. Merry Christmas. Happy New Year. I can't wait. It's going to be a great 2025. Looking forward to the off season. I know that's a dreaded word in some people's minds, but for me, I kind of like it because the clock, kind of turns back over, and here we go. What's next season? It's always fun. Of course, there's lots to do in the off season. We'll talk about that as well. So remember to always support your local feed store and go Texas.
Well, I hope the Bandits gave you an interesting episode that either entertained or educated you. Or better yet, both. Hell, I told them this podcasting thing looks harder to do than defeating Santa Ana. So if you would, please help them out by sharing it with all your like-minded friends to help the Bandits get the word out. And don't forget to check us out at feedbandit.com and grab some gear and apparel to support the cause of Texas. Remember, Texas, above all else, preserve the tradition, protect the legacy. Finally, as I said some time ago on the eve of the great battle, and I vigorously repeat here again, be men, be free men, that your children may bless their father's name. Well, fellow bandit, until next time.